Okay, so we need to talk about this patch news that we got from Arc Revo Japan the other day. Thankfully, they confirmed that the patch will be coming on December 15th, which is not very far away, honestly. I'm very happy about that because I think a lot of people are very ready to move on from this patch that we've been playing on, and people are really looking for some crucial changes. And I'm thinking, based on what they've told us about this patch and the screenshot that we have on screen, we might have some positive things to look forward to. This is not a lot of information. They didn't really give us exact details, but these bullet points that they gave to us are pretty promising, I think. So to start things off, they mentioned that there will be buffs for characters other than the highly rated, and removing the gap in character strength rather than making overall improvements or additions. So these are two separate lines. I feel like a lot of people read these lines kind of together, because initially when I read this, I was like, okay, does that mean that you're not going to nerf the top tiers? Is that like the point? Is the idea we're just trying to bring up the whole cast up to the rest of the cast? And I don't think that's the case, because I hope they don't do that. You know, I think the top tiers currently, you know, Nago, Happy Chaos, Ram, they're just too good right now, and bringing characters up to them is not what we need. We do need to bring characters up, but we need to also bring some of the characters down a little bit and get rid of some of the very egregious things that those characters are doing. So it says buffs for characters other than the highly rated. By that logic, the characters that are highly rated shouldn't be getting any buffs, ideally, right? Now, with this logic, the highly rated, we don't know what that means, and that can mean a lot of different things. If it's tournament results, there's a bunch of different tournament results to go from. If it's tier lists based on the different regions, we don't know what that's going to mean, because Japan and Europe and North America, they all have different tier lists, right? If it's based on like online win rates, based on like tower and whatnot, there's a lot of different things that they could be basing this on. Honestly, we don't really know what this means. I will say one thing, however. In this regard, I do think that there is one character that no matter what metric you use is highly rated, and that is Noriyuki. It doesn't matter who you talk to, what region, it doesn't matter what tournament results you look at, it doesn't matter what online results you look at. Nago is the one character that no matter what, he is highly rated. So by that logic, he's probably a character that's not going to get any buffs, thankfully. And then it says, you know, removing the gap in character strength rather than making overall improvements or additions. And I feel like basically their point is that if you look at the previous patches that we've had for Strive, very often they're trying to do things that make the characters feel more complete. They're more about like adding things to the game and making characters feel more fun. And that's why even the top tiers ended up getting buffs, because they were trying to, you know, complete a character's skills. I think with this patch, they're not trying to do that. They're not trying to complete anybody. They're trying to level the game out. And I think that's what it needs. Strive is in a position now where I think all the characters are doing things, are doing fun things. Now we just need to make the game function well, right? We need to get the balance in line. We need to get all the characters kind of where they should be. And I'm really happy to hear that, if that is what they're kind of alluding to here. They do need to be careful about buffs. Yes, there are definitely some characters I think could be easily overbuffed. And we don't know what they mean by like how highly rated are we talking, right? Are we talking top 3? Are we talking top 5? Are we talking top 10? You know, at what point is the cutoff for characters that don't need buffs? You have some characters that I think are quite strong already, but they aren't top tier per se. You have characters like Testament, you have characters like Jacko. Those characters I don't think really need buffs, but they're not top tier either, right? They're not even like top 8 characters. If you buff characters like Jacko and Testament, I think we're in a very scary situation, because those characters could very easily just replace the top tiers that we currently have. It would just be, you know, the same story. It would just look a little different basically. So I hope that they're kind of looking at that. When you bring characters down, naturally characters below them already kind of move up and matchups already shift. So hopefully they're careful about that. Now, at the end of the day, these lines are kind of just like typical developer speak. You know, every patch, they're going to be like, oh yeah, we're trying to, you know, bring the bottom characters up, blah, blah, blah. So really, we don't know how much this actually means, but it's reassuring to some degree. For the second line, revised opportunities for landing highly damaging combos and increased base damage scaling for some attacks except for close landing S, etc. So again, these are two different lines of text, and I think they both have different implications in what they mean. Revised opportunities for landing highly damaging combos. To me, that means they are reducing conversions. They want characters to not convert all the things that they are currently converting. That's considered a problem to them. I think to some degree it is. You know, if you look at the best characters in the game, again, your Nagos, your Rams, your Happy Chaoses, even the characters a little bit below them, like Viking and whatnot, part of the things that make those characters so strong are their ability to convert everything they hit you with. The top 3 especially, right? So I think this is a good change in some regards, where I think sometimes, you know, being able to get a wall break off of a 2K mid-screen probably shouldn't be happening. At the same time, however, combos are fun, right? People like having combos. Conversions make the game feel fun. It makes hits feel meaningful. So this is a change that I hope they don't go too crazy with, but I do think they are in the right to adjust, at least to some extent, the conversions that some characters are getting and what they're getting them off of. I think in particular, a lot of like K-normals should probably be looked at in terms of what characters are getting off of them. And I think a lot of special moves as frame traps end up getting conversions that are maybe better than they should be. I know he's not a good character, but thinking about like Kai, for example, his 214S on counter hit leads to a combo. I don't think frame trap special moves like that should lead to at least fat combos like they do currently, and they should probably be scaled back a little bit. Now, in regards to the second line, increase base damage scaling for some attacks, except for close standing S, etc. First of all, the etc. is terrifying. What do you mean, etc.? That etc. could literally mean any move in the game. That aside, I think increased base damage scaling for some attacks is very important. If you go and look at the base paration for a lot of moves in Strive currently, you'll notice that the numbers are probably way too high in a lot of situations. For those of you that don't know how Guilty Gear works, every move has a starting proration, as they call it, and it basically means how the rest of your combo is going to scale. A lot of K-normals, for example, are like 80 or 90% prorated, which means they're mostly unscaled starters for the most part. They're like slightly scaled. And for some special moves, like Ram's Rekka, for example, it's 100% proration, meaning the follow-up of the combo does 100% of its damage. So there's a lot of special moves in particular, and I think a lot of K and P normals that probably should have less proration to them, because, or I guess more proration, because that is often the types of hits that are leading to way too much damage, right? If Ram hits you with a 5K, it's a full combo into corner, into wall break, and you lost half your life. Same thing for Nago, same thing for Happy Chaos, even the characters below them, right? It's not just the top 3 characters. A lot of characters do that type of thing currently. So if that's what they're adjusting, if they're adjusting the proration on a lot of moves, I think that is a very good change. Some moves are meant to explode you, right? If you hit by Cold Slash, you should probably explode. That's normal. I think that's fair. And there are some other key moves, right? Like maybe some 2Hs, maybe certain like 6Hs, stuff like that. Those moves should cause you to lose a lot of life. But it needs to be more particular than it is currently, because right now, most moves, at least for the top half of the cast, tend to just delete. So I'm pretty excited about this change. I think damage is the #1 most egregious problem with Strive. I think a lot of the other problems the game has would be much more in line if damage was not as high as it currently is. Strive has a lot of simple situations, right? But those simple situations are made worse by the fact that you take so much damage from those situations. Okay, now for the last line, they mentioned increased reward when the defender goes on the counter-offensive and adjusted tension gauge and risk level depletion rate depending on the situation. So that first line, I have no idea what they mean. Increased reward when the defender goes on the counter offensive could mean a lot of different things. I know a lot of people think that means YRC, because YRC is kind of like a defensive mechanic you use to reverse a situation, but I feel like this is like one of those changes that the way they're wording it doesn't really make sense until we see the actual patch notes, right? These are obviously not actual patch notes. They're just kind of telling us that, like, in some way, they're wanting defense to be better than it currently is. This could be changing anything. This could be changing IB, it could be changing FD, it could be changing IBFD, it could be changing YRC, it could be changing so many different things. In regards to the second line, they mentioned adjusted tension gauge gain and risk level depletion rate depending on the situation. Adjusted tension gauge gain, I don't know if they mean the attacker or the defender. I have mentioned many times that I think the defender in this game does not build enough meter. You build meter so slowly on defense, and I think it's honestly pretty bad for the game for it to be that way, because you don't get meter to defend with, you don't get meter to FD with, you don't get meter to YRC with, you don't get meter to, you know, do a super or backdash BRC, whatever defensive mechanic, they all take meter. I think that this is a good change if it means defensively. If it means offensively, maybe they're reducing the amount of meter that you're getting for attacking. I'm going to assume they mean defensively though, because they're talking about defense in this bullet point. So that would definitely be a good change. I do hope, however, by the way, that we reduce the amount of meter you get for getting hit. I think this is kind of an under-talked about problem with Strive, that I think you build a little bit too much meter for getting hit. This is particularly problematic with like the heavyweight characters that have more health, and it just ends up being kind of like a really strong comeback mechanic for those characters, because they also especially use meter very well. So hopefully we get more meter for defending, but less meter for getting hit. And then the last part just says risk level depletion rate depending on the situation. I think this is also good depending on how extreme it is, because risk is obviously a big part of why damage is so high in Strive. I think if we just have less risk during a combo, that's obviously going to help damage out in a lot of situations. And hopefully there's other changes with risk too. I hope maybe you build it less quickly than you currently do. I hope it also regenerates quicker. Like if you stop blocking, risk still depletes very slowly. So I don't know. I am glad that they're looking at risk though, because I think it's a kind of a problematic mechanic. My biggest desires for this Strive patch have always been, I wanted damage to be lowered. They already mentioned that. I want defense to be better. They're already mentioning that. And the last thing that I really hope happens, and this is more so again kind of in regards to the strong characters, I really hope we get more counterplay to some of the stronger tools in the game. When you look at some of the stronger characters, again, just talking about like the top 10 characters even, they tend to really lack counterplay in a lot of situations, or counterplay tends to be very linear, right? Pick option A or pick option B and go with it. I'm really hoping that like those types of things get looked at and we get more options against them, or they weaken those tools, that way there is more counterplay against them. Now they also mentioned some stuff that they're going to be changing with like their online modes and the tower and whatnot as well. And just to kind of quickly talk about them, add an option to skip rating update sequence and settings. I think that's very nice. I don't know why that took over a year for us to get, but we have it now, so I'm happy about that. Option to rematch up to 3 matches even if a rating update occurs mid-set. Pretty much the same thing as the last thing. Option to manually select room when there are multiple rooms per floor. I have wanted this since release. Whenever you go to Celestial, right, you do not get to pick your instance of Celestial. It just puts you in one randomly. So if there are multiple instances and the amount of people in them is fluctuating, right, naturally they will be, sometimes you get put into a Celestial floor that has like 5 people in it, while there's a floor that maybe has like 18 people in it. Or sometimes you just don't get to play because there's like 24 people in one lobby and then 2 people in another lobby. Having it to be where you can just select what instance you go into is a very nice change. And then lastly, it mentions adjusted conditions for rating changes and making it easier to match with opponents at the same skill level. That sounds cool, but until we actually see how they're changing it, it doesn't really mean anything. And then lastly, they also showed that we are going to be getting a ping indicator and a connection indicator, which is very nice. I'm very happy about this. It just sucks whenever you connect to people and their connection is bad. I think this is really important, especially because we're getting crossplay, so we're gonna have more and more players to be able to play with. I didn't even mention we're getting crossplay, which is fantastic. But I think having this indicator is going to be just so nice, because now you're never gonna have to wonder whether the person you're sitting down with is laggy to you or not. A lot of times, you know, you'll have players that come from the West Coast to come play in East Coast lobby, right? Which is fine. Most of the time, East Coast and West Coast is pretty playable, but sometimes it's not. Now, if you are from the West Coast, you can come to the East Coast lobby and only play the people in the East Coast lobby that your connection is good with, which is nice to see. Yeah, overall, I like all these changes they mentioned, both from the balance side of things and just the online things. I'm really glad that they're actually kind of improving their online a little bit, because the online system in Guilty Gear Strive, obviously the netcode is fantastic, but I think a lot of the other online side of the game is pretty lacking. So I'm glad to see that they're addressing that. So all I can say is I'm very excited to see patch notes. Please give us patch notes soon. I am so excited to be able to go over these. Whenever patch notes drop, oh, I'm going to be in heaven, bro.